The sky above Tellara was red with fire as enemy ships filled the clouds, burning everything below. Buildings fell, sirens screamed, and people ran for cover. Tellara was Earth's last hope, the final colony far from the ruined homeworld, and now even it was under attack. The Varnock had come creatures of metal and flame, ruthless and silent. They didn't ask for peace or surrender. They simply destroyed. Captain Rian Holt ran through the smoke, past broken walls and wounded soldiers, his rifle in hand and his heart pounding. Every street was a battlefield. He had seen many wars, but this one felt like the end. As he reached the central command tower, it collapsed with a roar. He forced his way inside, choking on the dust, searching for survivors. That's when he saw her. Commander Alara Voss lay half-buried under rubble, one side of her face bloodied, her eyes half-closed. She was the leader of Telara's resistance, the reason they had lasted this long. Without her, the colony would fall even faster. Rian rushed to her side and pushed the debris away, lifting her carefully into his arms. She was light, too light, and burning with fever. Smoke and fire roared around them, but he didn't stop. He carried her through falling glass and flaming walls, desperate to reach the evac ship, waiting on the far end of the compound. The Varnock were closing in. There, huge figures moved through the ruins like walking infernos, tearing through metal and stone. One of them saw Rian and let out a strange sound, not a scream, not a roar, but something deeper, colder. Rian ducked behind cover and fired a blast that struck its shoulder, slowing it for just a second. Then he ran again, holding Alara close. Her body was limp, her breath uneven, her skin cold, despite the heat around them. He kept whispering to her, telling her to hold on, not knowing if she could even hear him. Finally, the evac ship came into view. Flames licked the landing pad, and the pilot was screaming into the comms, shouting that they were running out of time. Rian pushed forward with the last of his strength. As he climbed the ramp, something happened. Alara stirred. Her hand moved. Slowly, fingers brushing against the front of his armor. Her eyes fluttered open for a moment, and then she looked at him not with fear, but with something else, something deeper. Her lips parted, and in a broken whisper she said, "I remember." "You." Then her eyes closed again. Rian froze. The words echoed in his mind. He'd never met her before Tellara, so he thought. But her voice carried something familiar, something that shook him to his core. Before he could speak, the ship took off, lifting them away from the burning world. The last thing he saw was Tellara breaking beneath fire, but in his arms was a piece of a forgotten past and maybe, just maybe, a way to change the future. The dropship shook as it flew through the smoke-filled sky, dodging enemy fire from above. Rian held Alara tightly in his arms, his heart pounding with worry. Her face was pale, and she hadn't moved since whispering those strange words. "I remember you."
Outside.
The ship's window, Tellara burned below them. Explosions lit the surface like dying stars, and black smoke stretched high into the sky. In orbit, what remained of the human fleet was scattered, broken, barely holding off the Varnock ships swarming through space. The pilot shouted over the comms that they were approaching the cruiser Ashfall, the last command ship still running. When the dropship docked, medics rushed in to take Alara, but Rian refused to leave her side. They laid her gently in the ship's medical bay, connecting wires and scanning her for damage. Rian stayed near, watching every reading, hoping she would wake again. Then something strange happened. The ship's AI, a cold voice named Sira, suddenly stopped its usual reports and said one word in a tone Rian had never heard before. Alara. Voss access level Omega detected. Lights flickered. Doors locked down. The crew froze. Rian asked what Omega meant, but the AI didn't answer. Instead, it brought up a classified file with a name he had only heard in Old Whispers Project. Revenant. Rumors said it was Earth's final secret weapon before the fall. A hidden program made to turn people into living weapons. Alara, it seemed, had once been part of it. Rian stared at her sleeping face, trying to understand. She wasn't just a commander. She had been something more, something powerful, something buried. And then he wondered, is that why she remembered him? A cold shiver ran through him. Had they known each other before Tellara? before everything? Into the system, looking for more answers. But the files were locked behind strange codes that, to his surprise, reacted to his presence. The AI scanned him, and for a moment the ship went silent. Then Sira said, "Revenant signal detected. Subject, Rion Holt." He stepped back, confused. What did that mean? He had never been part of a secret program. He was just a soldier, a survivor. But now the ship claimed he was something else, something forgotten. The AI requested permission to activate deep memory recovery, and without thinking, he agreed. Pain hit him like a hammer. His head throbbed, and images flashed before his eyes wore fire. A dark lab deep beneath the surface of Earth. Scientists in panic, experiments, screams. He saw himself years younger, wires in his arms, metal buried in his skin. Then he saw her. Ilara, standing in the same room, her eyes sharp and cold, staring right at him. It wasn't a dream. It was real. It had been part of the same project long ago. It had been trained, changed, and then sent into the stars with their memories. Locked away, something had gone wrong. Earth had fallen, and the program was shut down. Their identities were buried, and their past erased. Till now. Ilara had remembered first, and now Rion did too. He looked at her again with new eyes. She wasn't just a leader, she was one of the last revenants, just like him. Together, they were part of something old and dangerous, something that might be the only way to stop the Varnock from wiping out what was left of humanity. Rion knew now that their meeting on Telara hadn't been fate or chance. It had been something planned long ago, and even if the galaxy had forgotten them, they hadn't forgotten each other. Not really. As the ship drifted silently through orbit, with fires burning behind and warships gathering ahead, Rian stood over Ilara's resting body and whispered, "I remember you too." Ilara opened her eyes slowly, blinking against the soft light of the medical bay. Her body ached, and her head felt heavy, but her mind was starting to clear. Rian sat beside her, his armor still scorched from the battle, his face tired but calm. She looked at him for a long moment, like she was searching for something in his eyes. He leaned forward, speaking gently, asking how she felt, but instead of answering, she said a name he didn't recognize, then another, then a location deep in Earth's old sector. Her voice was soft and slow, as if she was remembering things. From a dream, Rion didn't interrupt. He just listened, trying to understand. Finally, she looked directly at him and said, "You were there. When Earth fell, I saw you." He frowned. He'd never met her before Telara. At least he thought he hadn't. Ilara reached out and touched his arm, her fingers weak but steady. "I remember your face," she whispered. "They wiped your mind, just like they did mine." Rion pulled his hand back slightly, confused and unsure, but the words struck deep. He didn't know why, but they felt true, Ilara explained slowly. As pieces of her memory continued to return, she told him about the Revenant program, a secret Earth project designed during the final years of the war. It was created to make soldiers who couldn't die easily, who could recover from wounds, carry memory through generations, and fight long after others had fallen. But the program had been dangerous. Many had died in the early tests. Only a few survived. Ilara had been one of them, so had Rion. She told him they were not just soldiers, they were weapons made to last. Hidden in human form, placed across colonies to rise when Earth needed them again. But when Earth fell to the Varnock, the program went silent. The scientists who ran it died. The The memories of the revenants were locked away to protect them and maybe to keep them from breaking. Rian sat in silence, his hands clenched. He didn't want to believe it. His life, his past, his choices. What if none of it was real?
Right.
If it had all been programmed? But as Alara spoke, flashes of something hidden stirred inside him. He saw shadows of himself in places he didn't remember visiting. He saw battles he had no memory of fighting. And always, he saw Harella beside him. She told him more. They had once trained together, fought side by side, maybe even died, and come back more than once. They had been partners, maybe more than that. Her voice grew weaker again, but her eyes never left his. "You're not just a soldier, Rian," she said softly. "You're a revenant, just like me. That's why. You survived all those battles. That's why you never broke." Rian didn't know what to say. A part of him wanted to deny it, to cling to the man he thought he was. But another part, the part that had always felt out of place, like something was missing, finally found. A reason. And then he understood why her whisper back on Talara had felt so heavy. She hadn't just remembered his face. She had remembered their past, their bond, their purpose. As she drifted back into sleep, her hand fell from his arm. Rian sat back in the chair, staring at the ceiling, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. Everything had changed. They were no longer just survivors. They were remnants of a forgotten war, and the galaxy had no idea what was waking up. Rian sat alone in the darkened chamber, deep inside the cruiser Ashfall, watching the screen glow with old files that were once hidden. The AI had unlocked them after detecting the revenant signal inside him, and now his past once sealed away was slowly returning. Each video, each report, each recorded memory chipped away at the wall in his mind. He saw his younger self strapped to a medical table, wires running through his arms, machines humming around him. There were scientists speaking in hushed voices, calling him Subject Holt 7. He saw Alara too standing beside him in the lab, her expression cold and focused, like she was already used to the pain. They had been trained not just to fight, but to survive anything. The nanotech in their blood could repair their cells. Their minds were filled with tactical knowledge, but it had come at a price. They were tools, not people. They were sent into battles no one else could win, and when the war went bad, the project was shut down. Their memories erased, and their identities scattered like dust. As he watched, he realized something worse. There were others like them, more revenants hidden. Across the stars, still sleeping, their codes locked, Ilara woke again after hours of rest, stronger now, her voice steady. Rian told her what he had seen, and she nodded slowly. "They made us to be silent weapons," she said. "But we were meant to awaken if Earth ever needed us again." Eyes burned with something stronger than anger. And now, Earth is gone, so it's up to us, together. They went to the ship's war room and called the senior officers. Rian explained what he was, what Alara was, and what the Revenant program really meant. Some didn't believe at first, until Alara showed her command Code Omega protocol. The AI obeyed her like she was born to rule the ship. And then came the biggest shock. Inside the unlocked files was something buried even deeper. A location, marked only as Mirafall. It was not a place, but a weapon one the Revenants had been connected to. A powerful device created to fight the Varnock, using their own energy against them. It had been hidden before Earth's fall, buried on a lost planet called Kara 9. The coordinates were deep in dead space, far from supply lines, beyond any safe zone. The officers argued it was madness to go there. The ship was low on supplies. The Varnock were already hunting them. If they left, they might never return. But Rian stood before them, eyes sharp, voice steady, and said, "If we don't try, we lose everything." Alara stepped beside him, placing her hand on the table. "We were created to stop the Varnock. Mirafall is the key. If we're the last Revenants, then we finish what Earth started." There was silence in the room, heavy and tense. Then the captain gave the order. The Ashfall would set course for Karanine. They would chase the last hope of humanity, even into the dark. That night, Rian stood on the ship's observation deck, staring at the stars. His mind raced with questions. Who was he really? What part of him was real and what part was made in a lab? But when he thought of Alara, of her strength, her memories, her voice whispering, "I remember you," he found something solid. No matter who they had been before, they had survived. And now, together, they would fight for the future, even if it killed them. The journey to Karanine was long and silent, with the stars cold and distant beyond the ship's windows. The Ashfall moved carefully through dark space, avoiding Varnak patrols, its systems stretched thin and its crew tense. No one spoke much, but all of them understood what was at stake. Deep in the war room, Rian and Alara studied the hidden files they had unlocked, learning everything they could about Project Mirafall. It was not just a weapon, it was a machine designed to absorb energy, copy it, and return it 10 times stronger. The Varnak, who used plasma and fire, would be destroyed by their own power. But the project had never been tested. It had been rushed, buried, and then forgotten when Earth was lost. Alara believed it was the reason the Revenant program had been created, not just to fight, but to protect Mirafall in case all else failed. As the Ashfall got closer to Karanine, sensors began to pick up strange signals. The planet was quiet, but something about it felt wrong. It was covered in ash and storms, its atmosphere unstable. Old satellites floated in pieces above it, and, deep under the surface, signs of ancient defenses still flickered weakly. The crew gathered in the drop bay, preparing for landing. Rian checked his weapons while Alara fitted her old Revenant armor, recovered from the ship's deep storage. It had been waiting for her, sealed in a case that opened only with her voice. Rian had one too. He didn't remember wearing it before, but the armor fit like a second skin, like it belonged to him. The moment they stepped onto the surface of Karanine, the ash swirled around their feet, and the wind howled through broken towers. The ground was cracked and dry, but under the surface, they could feel something humming alive, waiting. They moved through ruins built long ago, signs of Earth's last science team still visible on old walls and signs. Ancient AI rose from the ground to attack them. The defenses still worked, even after all this time. Alara used her skills to hack the systems while Rian fought through waves of machines, moving with speed and strength that came from buried training. Every enemy he destroyed felt strangely familiar, like he had done this before. Alara reached the vault doors, her hands shaking as she entered the final codes. The door groaned open, revealing a massive chamber filled with silver walls and a black sphere at its center. Mirafall. It pulsed slowly like it was breathing. Lights flickered on as they entered, scanning them both. Then a voice echoed through the chamber, cold, mechanical voice that said, "Revenant pair detected. Confirm." Alara looked at Rian. He nodded. They stepped forward together, placing their hands on the smooth surface of the weapon. At once a flood of memories crashed through them, visions of war, of loss, of screaming skies and burning cities. They saw Earth fall again and again. They felt the pain, the fear, the duty. Mirafall reacted. Its lights flared bright. The room shook. Above the planet, something had awakened. The Varnak. Their ships moved fast, diving toward Karanine, like birds of fire. Somehow, they had known. Or maybe they had always been watching, waiting for Mirafall to rise. The crew on the Ashfall shouted warnings, reporting the enemy closing in. The ship's captain ordered defenses to prepare, but everyone knew the truth. They wouldn't survive long against a full Varnak fleet. Rian and Alara looked at each. Other Mirafall was online, but it needed a command to activate. A human command. Alara turned to Rian, her eyes fierce. "We do this together." They gave the order. Mirafall lit up with blue and white light surrounding them both. Their armor changed, glowing with the same power. The air pulsed with energy. Far above, the Varnak ships hesitated. For the first time in centuries, they felt something unfamiliar fear. Mirafall was not just a weapon. It was a mirror of destruction. Whatever came at it would be sent back stronger. As the enemy closed in, Rian and Alara rose into the air, the energy of Mirafall lifting them like wings of fire. The final battle had begun. And for the first time in a long time, humanity wasn't running. It was rising, ChatGPT said. Karanine shook under their feet as alarms echoed from the deep vaults and the wind outside screamed louder. Full of rising ash and fear. The moment Rianne and Alara gave the activation command, Mirafall came alive with power that pulsed like a living heart. Lights flowed through the walls and up their arms as the ancient weapon bonded with their armor, sending a strange warmth through their bodies. The cold metal of the suit now felt like skin, pulsing with every heartbeat. Rianne looked at Alara, and she nodded, no words needed. They ran from the chamber as the ground above rumbled, moving fast toward the surface to meet the enemy that now filled the sky. When they stepped out of the vault, the air was on fire. The Varnock fleet had arrived in full force, their black and red warships breaking through the clouds like giant blades. Energy blasts rained down across the planet, lighting up the ash-filled sky. The Ashfell, still in orbit, tried to hold the line, but the Varnock outnumbered it 10-1. Its shields flickered, and sections of the hull burned. Rianne and Alara launched into the air, no longer bound by gravity. Mirafall's energy lifted them faster than any jet or ship and wrapped them in glowing shields. The moment they reached the battle zone, the enemy noticed. Varnock fighters turned toward them, sending out bursts of molten plasma. Rianne spun through the blasts, dodging with speed no human should have had, and shot forward like a comet, crashing into a ship and ripping. It opened with his bare hands. Alara followed, her arms glowing with charged light as she aimed toward the enemy core ships. Every time they were hit, their armor absorbed the power, storing it, growing stronger, then releasing it back as energy waves that tore ships apart. The Varnock, who had once feared nothing, began to pull back, but it was too late. Rianne and Alara were no longer just human. They were weapons shaped by Earth's final hope, powered by its final breath, and they were unstoppable. On the ground, Mirafall extended its reach, sending arcs of light into the sky that struck Varnock ships like lightning, exploding them midair. The sky turned from red to white as the fire of the enemy was reflected back at them 100 times. Stronger Rianne fought with fury, but not blind rage. He moved with purpose, memory guiding each step, each strike. Alara moved beside him like a ghost of flame, faster than sight, cutting through metal like paper. Together, they reached the largest Varnock ship, a monstrous vessel pulsing with dark energy. It had come to destroy Karanine completely. But before it could fire, Rianne and Alara landed on its hull. The ship tried to shake them off, but they held firm. Then, Alara placed her hand on its surface, and Mirafall's energy flowed through her and into the ship. Its own fire turned against it. From within, burning it alive, the giant ship cracked and fell toward the ground in pieces. Above them, the rest of the Varnock fleet began to retreat, some warping out into deep space, others lost in chaos. The battle was turning. The Ashfall, now with new hope, pushed forward, destroying the remaining ships with help from Mirafall's energy. At last, silence returned. The sky cleared, the fires faded, and the planet stood quiet once more. Rianne and Alara landed gently on the scorched earth, their armor slowly dimming as Mirafall powered down into a resting state. Around them, the ash floated like soft snow. Rianne looked at Alara, and she looked at him. They were alive. They had won, but more than that, they had remembered who they truly were. They had become what they were always meant to be, not tools. Not lost weapons, but protectors of what remained. And whatever came next, they would face it together. ChatGPT said. The air was still as Rianne and Alara stood in the silence of the scorched battlefield. Their armor cracked but still glowing faintly from the power of Mirafall. The sky above Karanine was no longer red with fire, which clears wide and filled with quiet stars. Smoke curled up from the shattered ground. Broken pieces of Varnock ships lay scattered across the ash, burning slowly like fallen beasts. The battle was over. The enemy had been broken, their greatest fleet shattered, their strongest weapons turned against them. For the first time in many years, the humans had not only survived, they had won. But the cost was written in every breath they took. Rian knelt beside a fallen Varnock drone. Its molten frame cracked open, and looked up at the glowing vault from which Mirafal had awakened. He felt its pull still in his chest, a connection that was more than just power. It was memory, pain, and something like destiny. Alara stood beside him, her face calm, but her eyes heavy with thought. She had remembered everything now, every mission, every loss, every time she had been erased and rebuilt. She remembered Rian not just as a comrade, but as something more. They had fought together long before Telera, before even the fall of Earth. Their minds had been wiped clean. But their bond had survived in the deep places of their hearts. The AI aboard the Ashfall reported that the remaining enemy forces had scattered. No signals of organized movement remained. The Varnock had lost their command structure in the fight, and with it, their direction. Across the ship, the crew was cheering, hugging, crying, and staring at the screens in disbelief. After years of running, hiding, and dying, they had finally struck back, and the galaxy would know. Rian and Alara returned to the ship quietly, greeted by silent salutes and wide eyes. They didn't speak much as they walked through the corridors. There were no medals for what they had done, no words big enough to name what they had become. Mirafal's energy still hummed inside them, quiet but steady. It would remain with them now, forever part of who they were. That night, they stood together at the observation deck, watching the stars. No fire, no alarms, just peace. Rian looked at Alara and spoke softly. "Do you think it's over?" She didn't answer right away. Then she shook her head gently. "Not yet. The Varnock will remember this, and there are others out there, watching, waiting." He nodded, knowing she was right. But something had changed. They were no longer forgotten weapons. They were not ghosts in the shadows. They were awake, and the galaxy had felt it. Alara turned to him and said, "They shut us down once. They buried what we were. But now, the stars will remember us." Rian smiled slightly, and for the first time in a long while, it wasn't a sad smile, well, it was strong. "Let them come," he said. "We'll make them remember what humans are." As the ship slowly moved away from the dead planet, leaving the ashes behind, Mirafal's vault sealed itself again, quiet but not asleep. It had done its part. Now the fire of humanity burned in two soldiers, two revenants, who had nothing left to fear. And though the war was not yet finished, the galaxy had changed forever.